The auditorium buzzed with cheers, cameras flashing as graduates crossed the stage one by one. My palms were damp against the fabric of my gown, the number pinned on my chest reminding me that in just a few steps, I'd be face to face with a moment I'd fought years for. But then, just as my name echoed through the speakers, my father leaned forward from his seat in the second row, his voice sharp enough to slice through the applause. She doesn't deserve to be here. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. He didn't whisper quietly.
He wanted people to hear.
My cousins, my aunts, the same relatives who had rolled their eyes when I studied until dawn, they laughed. A ripple of mocking chuckles spread down the row like wildfire. My throat tightened, but I kept walking, my heels clicking against the wooden stage. I forced myself to stand tall as the dean handed me the diploma, the paper proof of years spent clawing my way through obstacles no one believed I could overcome. From the stage, I caught sight of my father's smirk. My mother leaned in, murmuring something to him with an amused shake of her head. My uncle nudged my cousin beside him, whispering, "Told you she'd never last. What a waste of tuition." The laughter burned worse than fire. But I didn't let my face crack. I didn't let them see me break. Instead, I turned, scanning the audience, and that's when I saw him, my grandfather, sitting stiff, hands resting on his cane, his eyes sharp, piercing through the noise like a blade. For a moment, the hall seemed to hush around me. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't smiling. He looked furious. I walked down the stairs with my diploma clutched so tight it bent at the edges. I slid into my seat with silence hanging heavy around me, their whispers still needling into my back. And then, slowly, painfully slowly, Grandpa rose. His chair creaked, and every head turned as if gravity itself had shifted. His cane struck the floor with a sharp, commanding sound. Enough. His voice was gravel, but it carried. The room froze. From the inside pocket of his worn blazer, he pulled out a thick, yellowed envelope. The edges were frayed, the paper marked by time, but when he held it up, the weight of it silenced every laugh, every whisper. "You think she doesn't deserve this?" His glare swept across my father, my uncles, every relative smirking in that row. "Maybe it's time you all hear the truth." The hall shifted, a tension so thick it pressed against my ribs. My father's smirk faltered. My mother's face drained pale. My cousins leaned forward, eager, confused. And then Grandpa tore open the seal. His shaking hands pulled out folded papers, his voice steady as he began to read aloud. What came next made the entire auditorium go still, like the very air had been stolen from the room. The crinkling of paper filled the air as Grandpa Henry unfolded the envelope. The crowd's applause, once deafening, had melted into a stunned hush. Every eye in the auditorium clung to his trembling hands, but his voice, low, rough, unshaken, cut through the silence like steel. "This," he began, holding up the document for all to see, "is the truth none of you ever had the courage to speak." My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his cocky smirk evaporating. "Dad, sit down," Richard hissed under his breath. But the microphone near the aisle picked up his words, echoing across the hall, exposing his fear. Grandpa's gaze locked onto him. "You've spent years telling Emily she'd never be enough. You mocked her grades, laughed at her struggles, and today, you tried to humiliate her in front of hundreds. But Richard, maybe you should tell everyone what you never wanted her to know." A sharp murmur ran through the audience. Heads turned, students whispered, families leaned in, sensing the eruption building. My hands were clammy against my lap, my heart rattling in my chest. I wanted to speak, to demand answers, but something inside me whispered, "Wait." Grandpa lowered his eyes to the page. His voice didn't waver. "This envelope contains records. Records that prove Emily wasn't just working twice as hard. She was carrying the weight of this family when all of you turned your backs." I blinked. "What?" Gasps rose as Grandpa read on. "Bank statements. Proof of tuition payments. Letters from the bursar's office. He looked up, his eyes burning into my father. Do you want to explain, Richard? Or should I? My father's face had gone red, veins visible in his neck. Stop this nonsense, he barked. Those are lies, old man's tricks. But Grandpa slammed his cane against the floor. The sound cracked like thunder, drawing startled gasps. Lies? Then tell me, son, who signed the checks for her first 2 years of college? Who sold his own farmland to cover what you refused to pay? My breath caught. I turned, staring at Grandpa in disbelief. He met my eyes, his voice softening for only a moment. Emily, you thought your parents made sacrifices for your future. You thought their silence, their resentment, was just tough love. But the truth is, it wasn't them keeping you afloat. Whispers surged. Students craned their necks. Relatives sat frozen, and my mother clutched her husband's arm so tight her knuckles blanched. Grandpa's hand shook, but his words didn't. It was me. And I hid it because I wanted them, your parents, to have a chance to be proud of you, to step up as they should have. But instead, his eyes narrowed at Richard. They mocked you, undermined you, and today, tried to humiliate you. A heavy silence pressed on the room, broken only by the faint hum of the auditorium lights. My father's jaw clenched, his fists balled at his knees. My Uncle Mark leaned forward, whispering something sharp to him, but the whispers weren't enough to drown out the murmurs of shame spreading across the hall. Then Grandpa pulled out another folded sheet, smaller, darker, worn thin from years of being handled. His voice lowered, but somehow it carried further. And this is the letter your grandmother wrote before she passed. A letter meant for Emily. I kept it safe until the right time. My heart slammed against my ribs. A letter? From Grandma? He unfolded it, the paper trembling. To my dearest Emily, he read, his voice cracking. If you are reading this, it means you've made it to a milestone I always knew you would reach, even when others doubted you. Don't let their bitterness become your chains. You are stronger than them, smarter than them, and one day, you will rise higher than they ever imagined. Gasps rippled through the auditorium. Some students clapped instinctively, only to silence themselves in awe of the moment. Grandpa's eyes were wet, but his voice was hard as stone when he continued. She left this for you because she knew. She knew they would never see your worth. But I did. I always did. Tears stung the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. My chest heaved as rage and gratitude collided inside me. For years, I thought I was fighting alone, dragging myself through mud while my family mocked from the sidelines. But here was the truth, laid bare before hundreds. I was never alone. My father lurched to his feet, his chair screeching. Enough of this circus, he roared, pointing a trembling finger at me. You don't deserve that diploma, Emily. You're nothing without us. But his voice cracked. His mask slipped. For the first time, the arrogance faltered, revealing fear. And that's when something inside me snapped. I rose from my seat. Slowly, deliberately, the weight of every eye in the hall pressing against me. My diploma clutched in one hand, the letter in the other. Without you. My voice rang clear, stronger than I'd ever felt it. You're right. I am nothing without you, because I had to become everything in spite of you.
Gasps. Shouts.
A surge of murmurs as the hall erupted in chaos. My father's face twisted, rage barely contained. My mother hid her face in her hands. My cousin sat pale, unable to laugh anymore. And me? I stood tall in my gown, the truth finally out, the weight of years of silence lifted. But Grandpa wasn't done. He lifted his cane once more, his voice booming across the hall like a final verdict. And for anyone who still doubts, he said, there's one last thing in this envelope that will silence you all forever. The air froze.
My heart slammed like a drum.
Every person in that hall leaned forward, holding their breath. And then he pulled it out. The envelope trembled in Grandpa Henry's hand, but his eyes stayed fixed, sharp as steel. The crowd held its breath as he slid out the last sheet. It wasn't thick like the bank statements. It wasn't faded like Grandma's letter. This paper was crisp, official, and stamped with something bold at the top. "This," Grandpa said slowly, his voice echoing against the auditorium walls, "is a legal document your father never wanted you to see." Richard's face drained of color.
Dad, don't.
"Don't you dare." Grandpa ignored him. His gaze swept across the room, then landed back on me. "It's a scholarship contract. A full scholarship awarded in Emily's name." He held the page higher. "She was granted this 2 years ago. But instead of celebrating her achievement, your father intercepted it. Never told you, never forwarded it. He kept it hidden." My stomach dropped. My vision blurred as shock pressed against me. "He what?" The whispers in the crowd burst into a wave. "She earned it." How could he hide that? Unbelievable. Grandpa's voice hardened, every word like a gavel. He hid it because he wanted control. Because if you knew you could stand on your own, you wouldn't crawl back to him. He wanted you to fail. Gasps rippled through the hall. My father's mask finally shattered. He shoved his chair back, his voice ragged. "She didn't deserve it. She would have squandered it, just like everything else. I was protecting her from herself." "Protecting?" Grandpa thundered, slamming his cane against the stage floor.
No.
"You were protecting your ego. You couldn't bear the thought that your daughter achieved something greater than you ever did. You tried to bury her light so you could stay standing in the shadows." The crowd erupted, students clapping, some booing, others shaking their heads in disgust. Professors exchanged knowing glances, the dean himself tightening his jaw, as if he'd seen this kind of cruelty too many times before. I stood frozen, my chest heaving, my fists trembling at my sides. The letter from Grandma crinkled in my grip. For years I believed my failures were mine alone, that maybe I wasn't good enough, that maybe my father was right. But now I saw the truth. The humiliation I felt minutes ago was gone. In its place, fire. I turned slowly toward my father. His face was flushed, sweat beading at his temples, his hands balled into fists. My mother stared at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes, shame etched deep in her features. My Uncle Mark shook his head in disbelief, muttering under his breath. "You knew," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "You knew I had this scholarship. And you hid it from me?" Richard snarled. "You think the world is just going to hand you things? I taught you the hard way. I was making you stronger." "Stronger?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "You broke me. Every night you told me I wasn't enough. Every time I came home with grades, you laughed. And when I cried, you called me weak. That wasn't strength. You just wanted me to fail." The room buzzed with whispers, but none of them mattered. It was just me, my father, and the years of venom between us finally spilling into the open. Grandpa raised the paper higher. "And if anyone doubts, here is the dean's signature. Proof that Emily Carter earned this scholarship fair and square." Every word of Richard's lies is shattered by this. Students clapped now, louder, some rising to their feet. Professors joined in. The noise thundered through the hall, swallowing my father's rage. Richard bellowed over the clapping, his voice hoarse, cracking. "She still doesn't deserve it. You're all blind. She's weak, fragile. She'll fall apart the first time the world pushes back."
And that's when I snapped.
I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the noise. The world did push back. Every single day. And I didn't fall apart, I survived. I worked 3 jobs, studied until sunrise, and still made it here while you sat back and mocked me. I don't need your approval. I don't need your money. And I sure as hell don't need your permission to exist. The room roared with applause, the sound shaking the walls. Students stomped their feet, families cheered, strangers stood in solidarity. Richard's face twisted, his rage collapsing into something pathetic. He sank back into his chair, muttering curses, his power stripped away in front of everyone he once commanded. Grandpa lowered the paper and turned to me. His eyes softened, voice breaking. "Emily, you don't just deserve to be here. You earned every step. And no one can take that from you." Tears finally broke free, sliding hot down my cheeks. I didn't care who saw. For the first time, they weren't tears of weakness. They were victory. I clutched Grandma's letter to my chest, my diploma in the other hand, and turned to face the hall. Hundreds of faces staring, applauding, their eyes no longer mocking but admiring. I had been silent for too long, but not anymore. I leaned toward the microphone, my voice steady. To every person who's ever been told they don't deserve their place, remember this moment. You don't need their approval. You don't need their applause. You only need the truth and the courage to keep going. The roar that followed drowned out everything, the whispers, the shame, the years of being belittled. And as I looked down, I saw my father's face pale, his eyes darting nervously. For once, he wasn't the loudest voice in the room. The weight had shifted. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Because the fallout from Grandpa's reveal, the ripple it would send through my family, was only just beginning. The applause thundered like an earthquake, shaking the walls of the hall. But beneath that roar, I could see it, the unraveling of my father. Richard Carter sat hunched in his seat, eyes darting wildly, like a cornered animal. My mother's hands trembled as she tried to calm him, but her silence spoke louder than his fury. She had no defense left. Grandpa Henry stood tall, his cane braced against the floor, his presence commanding the room. When the crowd finally quieted, he spoke again, his voice low but devastating. "Richard," he said, his words dripping with disappointment. "You tried to bury your own daughter's future. But tonight, the truth buried you." The audience gasped. A few clapped, others murmured, but everyone could feel the finality in Grandpa's words. Richard shot up from his chair, red-faced and sweating. "You think this makes her a hero?" he barked, jabbing a finger toward me. "She's nothing without this family. Nothing." I didn't flinch. I met his glare with a steadiness I didn't know I had. "You're wrong. I'm nothing because of this family or, at least, the part of it that tried to chain me down. But I'm everything because of the part that believed in me." I glanced at Grandpa, my voice catching. The part that chose to lift me up when no one else would. The hall erupted in cheers again, waves of applause crashing like a tide. For the first time, I wasn't drowning in humiliation. I was standing above it. Richard staggered back, his bravado cracking. He looked to his brother, Uncle Mark, for support. But Mark only shook his head, muttering, "You've embarrassed us all." Even Ryan, the cousin who had laughed loudest earlier, sat frozen, pale-faced, unable to look me in the eye. The power had shifted. I stepped toward the microphone, my diploma still tight in my hand. For years, I stayed silent because I thought silence kept the peace. But silence only gave power to the wrong voices. Tonight, I'm done being silent. Every word poured from a place deeper than anger. It was release. Years of mockery, doubt, and quiet tears behind closed doors, all of it spilling into strength. Graduation isn't just about grades or jobs or what people think you deserve. It's about surviving everything they said would break you. And I survived. I earned this. The crowd exploded once more, rising to their feet. Professors clapped, students shouted my name, strangers cheered with tears in their eyes. The humiliation my family had meant for me had turned into the loudest victory I could have imagined. But Richard wasn't done. His voice, desperate and cracking, cut through the cheers. "This doesn't change anything. You'll still come crawling back when the world chews you up and spits you out. You'll see, you'll need us." For a moment, the hall quieted, waiting for my response. I lifted Grandma's letter, the paper soft and fragile in my grip. "You're wrong again. The world already tried to chew me up. And I didn't crawl back, I climbed higher. And from now on, the only family I need is the one that stands with me, not against me." My words echoed, sharp as glass, leaving him with nothing. Richard's face crumpled. He sank into his seat, defeated, shrinking under the weight of his own exposure. My mother turned away, her shoulders shaking, no defense left to offer him. The rest of my relatives stared, trapped between shame and silence. Grandpa laid a hand on my shoulder, his touch firm, grounding. His voice softened for me alone. Your grandmother would be proud. You gave them their reckoning, and you stood tall doing it. I swallowed hard, tears threatening again, but this time they were tears of something different. Relief, triumph, freedom. As the ceremony closed, I walked across the stage one last time, not as the girl who had been laughed at, mocked, and dismissed, but as someone unbreakable. Cameras flashed, voices shouted, and though my name had never sounded louder, it was the silence of my father that thundered the most. Outside the auditorium, the cool night air rushed against my face. Students poured out, their laughter and chatter filling the campus. Some came up to me, strangers I'd never spoken to, offering words like, "You inspired us," and "That was powerful." I smiled, nodding, thanking them, but inside I was still replaying every moment. Grandpa walked beside me, slow but steady. "This is only the beginning, Emily," he said. "Let them choke on their shame.
Your future's yours now.
Not theirs." I gripped his arm, holding tight. "I won't waste it. I promise." From across the parking lot, I caught sight of my parents. Richard was pacing, furious, waving his arms, his voice too faint to catch. Linda trailed behind him, head low, as if finally realizing the damage they had caused. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what they thought. Their laughter no longer held chains. Their words no longer mattered. Because tonight, in front of everyone, they lost their power. And I found mine.